It's time for the CyberSecurity News Byte with Jim Guckin.
CyberSecurity News Byte, episode number 48. For March 6, 2023, popular FinTech apps expose exploitable secrets, Microsoft Word RCE PoC is now public, phishing campaigns target job seekers and employers, and old vulnerabilities haunt organizations. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am Jim Guckin, obviously. So our first story this week talks about the Approved Mobile Threat Lab and what they found about the apps you may be using to deal with your financial life. Well, they may be, not so secure, or not as secure at least you thought. So the Approved Mobile Threat Lab has downloaded and scanned about 200 financial services apps. These apps come from the US, the UK, France, and Germany, and they're strictly the ones you can find on the Google Play Store. So they took these 200 financial services app and kind of started breaking them apart to find out what you might see on them. And in total, not just at these 200, but more than 200, they looked about 650 unique apps. They found about 92% of these apps leaked valuable, exploitable secrets, meaning things that a malicious actor or hacker can either sniff the traffic out and be able to use that they could leverage it in some kind of attack. Not necessarily when you want to hear when you're talking about your money. They found about 23% of the apps leaked extremely sensitive secrets. So, once again, not stuff you really want someone to be, or you want an app to be kind of floating out there. So let's break a little more into these numbers. So out of these 650 unique apps they looked at, 5 had no secrets exposed whatsoever. These are, I guess, more trustworthy apps. And once again, these apps, I need to make it clear, are not ones that were downloaded from a third-story site or anything along those lines. These are the primary apps for these organizations available in the Play Store. So just remember that when you're going to the Google Play Store or anything along those lines, and you're looking for these apps. So 5 were well coded and they didn't expose any secrets. 48 had low-value secrets. 444 medium value secrets, and 150 had the high value secrets that an attacker could use, against you, possibly in an attack. So 2 out of this list had critical runtime attack surfaces that could be used to steal the API key, the thing that's calling up to the financial institution and saying, "Hey, I'm you." They could steal that and then use it. 5% of the apps had good defenses against those runtime attacks. 4% were protected against man-in-the-middle attacks, meaning the malicious actor sets up a communication between your device and them, and then passes that information from them to your financial services provider. So they act as man-in-the-middle. There was some that had hard-coded sensitive data in the app. In fact, a lot of them had hard-coded data. This is, usually think about this when you're talking about businesses, which is like a password that is encoded into a script so it can run properly. And the problem with this, especially in a mobile app, is, in an organization, you may have a script. And I'm not saying this is a good idea. This really is a horrible idea. But you'd have to be in the environment to do it. The problem with mobile apps is you can easily download and break apart mobile apps. So their secret codes can easily be extracted by anyone with, the forethought to do so. Now, none of the 650 apps were safe against all these kind of man-in-the-middle, the API key, or hard-coded secrets. None of them had all of them. It just depends on, which ones they had. Only 4 apps out of the entire had runtime protections against man-in-the-middle attacks. And all were, luckily, payment and transfer apps that were not U.S. So these are all, was it Germany, France, those kinds. So if you're doing a payment transfer app in the U.S., you might want to just be a little on the edge there. Apps deployed in Europe should go without saying were better protected than those available only in the U.S. For the secret exposure and the runtime protections. And that's probably because European has those stricter privacy rules. And they do focus a little more on security. Should be no surprise to you, crypto apps were more likely to release secret information. About 36% immediately offered highly sensitive secrets when they were scanned. Only 18% of the personal finance apps leaked sensitive information, possibly because they utilize API keys a lot less in there. For man-in-the-middle attacks, traditional banks, the bank that you go to and you store your money in, unless you're some kind of hedge fund or really rich person, probably not listening to my show if that applies to you, but where we keep our money in banks, they were obviously twice as likely to be well protected over the other sectors, most likely because they don't want to lose you as a customer. And they protect against some runtime manipulation as well. So the article doesn't list the apps that were tested. So this is just something to keep in the back of your head when you have a financial app that you're utilizing or your organization is utilizing and you put on mobile devices. It may not be necessarily as secure as you would hope it to be. I mean, or at least I hope my financial apps are a little better than most. So our second story is a real quick story, but it is something you need to be paying attention about if you are in the cybersecurity field. There is a CVE, which is CVE 2023-21716, which was originally found by security researcher Joshua J. Drake back in November of last year. And what this is a heap corruption vulnerability in Microsoft's RTF parser. So RTF is one of those formats you can sometimes get Word documents in, depending on what it is. But what this vulnerability does is it allows an attacker to achieve RCE, which is remote code execution, meaning they're able to run code remotely from this with the privileges of the user. So in most organizations, that'll probably be a user with maybe some low-level rights, which may or may not be really damaging. And maybe your users can't run applications. Though I do know there's always exceptions in every organization. It always happens that way. Or your user somehow has admin to the machine, which would allow these attackers to, gain a foothold in that system. So really what it is don't make your users admins. And this is why. And the funny thing about this is it doesn't even have to actually be opened. All you have to do is have the preview pane pop up and it'll run the malicious code. So, make sure your users are not admins, or make sure you're opening up things that, as a non-admin account, which is generally, whether it is a personal or a business thing, is always the best thing. You have your account that you use for everyday stuff. It has no rights to the computer, nothing it needs to be worried about. But then you have an admin account to run and install certain applications as needed. Now, Microsoft confirmed that the preview pane is part of the attack vector. You open it up, you're running the code as well, but this can be run in preview mode. Microsoft recommends patching as soon as possible. You can also configure Microsoft Outlook to read all standard mail in plain text format, means no HTML. If you get a lot of emails where you have fancy web graphics in them, which is most emails today, may not be super easy. And Microsoft also recommends using file block policy to prevent RTF files from opening from unknown or untrusted devices. So, this is a standard kind of attack. These are things you probably should be doing already. But as I said, the fact that this one is, an RTF file versus like a docx file, which we've seen forever, or any of the other formats, you just need to have the preview pane open, and it can run. And instead, if it's on a regular computer where they don't have much, they can't install much, they still might be able to do some recon. But if they have admin rights, then easily this person could get a foothold in that system, and they may not come out easily. So, patch very often, like you should always do for every application as soon as it comes out, as soon as the vendor pushes you that way. But you should be using Microsoft Office file block to prevent any documents from opening from unknown or untrusted sources. This way it'll keep your users better. It doesn't alleviate attacks. I mean, you could have a business email compromise known as a BEC. Those could come from a trusted source, but yeah, let's just avoid it altogether and avoid that kind of stuff. For our third story, and I don't remember if I've talked about this before on this podcast or not. In the middle of recording, I don't want to go back and look at what it was, but I know it's something I've talked about in the past previously. If I've talked about it on the show, I apologize, but it's back in the news again, which is phishing campaigns are targeting job seekers and the employers. So not just one or the other. I think if I remember correctly, I think last time we talked about them targeting organizations, but now it's the job seekers as well. And that's because right now we're kind of going through an economic downturn, and threat actors are exploiting that. They're using phishing campaigns with malware attached to target both, job seekers and employers. And the whole idea around this is to steal sensitive information and hack company recruiters. So from the job seeker, they want the sensitive information. From companies, it's the same tactic. They want to be able to get malware onto the recruiters' computers and hopefully into the network. So for the job seekers, they send them an email that pretends to be from a recruitment agency. So not specifically a company, but just a general agency. They ask them to provide some personal information, give them, set up a login, fill out this information so we can get you a job, like you typically would see when you're starting to apply for these things. Now, the email looks legitimate, but they're designed to steal sensitive information, such as the password. Most likely, as I said, passwords get reused by people. So if you put a password in here, they can try it against other things. Financial information, if they ask for bank account information, that's where they can gain that stuff. I'm sure they'll ask for your social security number and stuff like this, like all the stuff you would normally do when you're applying for jobs. And you've now given it to the hacker. Now, they also want to install malware and everything else they can to get everything else off your computer as well. But now you've given them most of the stuff. Now, this malware campaign that's attached to this phishing campaign drops some prominent malware that's out there. So you get like anti-Tesla, Emotet, Cryox Trojans, Nemucod. So all these different ones are ones that they try to drop and once again gain persistence and steal more information from you. Now, this was brought to light recently by Trellix researchers. They observed that the attackers are posing as job seekers to target the employers as well. The attackers send special emails or specially crafted emails delivering malware through attachments like any other kind of just normal phishing scheme would do. The URLs are disguised as kind of the resume or identification documents for the person who, quote unquote, is applying for the job. So, hey, here's my resume, here's a document with my driver's license and stuff you may need to move forward with employment. And all that's to trick someone into doing it. Cyber criminals are taking advantage of the high volume of job applications that employers are receiving. So in this, if you're a recruiter, you probably go through a lot of emails every day, and this is where they're trying to target. If you're going through a bunch, you may get sloppy. So your cyber hygiene needs to be just exquisite on this. Now the goal, like every other goal, is to gain unauthorized access to information, personnel data, or disrupt an organization. So, that has all these different things to it. To make this look even more legitimate, Trellix has said that they've even seen some of these attacks use valid social security numbers and driver's licenses. Stolen, sometimes fake. So, it looks more legitimate, and honestly, it's more likely to trick someone. Now, for the job seekers, they are using type squatting. They're using domains that popular job seekers are looking for. And for those of you who don't know, type squatting is a social engineering attack where they use a similar domain name as something you're expecting. So the one you usually see in most phishing emails are cybersecurity awareness training is like Amazon, AMZ0N. So that you wouldn't notice the 0 and the O are different, especially if you're looking quickly. And, they sometimes copy the way the website looks so that you fall for it. And, probably, in the scenario, not that I've seen it, not that I know what it is, but I would go for monster.com with a 0 instead of O. And trick, users into thinking that they're applying to the real monster.com when they've gone through, some job board, and it says, hey, apply for a job here. You look, you say, oh, it's monster.com. You click, it looks like monster.com. It has all the information. And then you put your information in, and well, they have it now. So the type squatted domains that they're seeing in this kind of Trellix report were like LinkedIn. I'm assuming the I in LinkedIn is probably a 1 along those lines, or an 1 instead of an L, Indeed, and some others. So, kind of watch out for it. Some of the ones that Trellix actually calls out is like Indeed-ID.com, Indeed-7.com, Indeed-A.com, Indeed.ch, Indeed, INDEDD.com, Linkahedin, LINKHEDIN.com, Lingrin, LINKEGIN, and LinkedIn.com, LINKEDNN.com. If you missed these, you can always go back to our show notes at cybersecurity.newsbyte.com to be able to add these to a block list. But just be aware, these are kind of what's going on right now. And when there's a lot of job seekers, people take advantage of it. And these groups are taking advantage of it on both sides. For our final story, it's something that some organizations that I've talked to, they've always focused on, the new hot CVEs that come out and the attacks that are currently going on. But one of the companies I love, Tenable, who is a cybersecurity company, put out a report recently that, look, it's not always the new ones. Hackers will go back and see if your organization, after maybe a year or two of that vulnerability being out there, let's see if it's still there, see if they didn't patch it. So don't just always rely on how new a CVE is. It can be a lot worse. So Tenable's report had 2.29 billion records were exposed due to old vulnerabilities. That's 257 terabytes of data. 3% of all breaches were identified as caused by unsecured databases, which released about 800 million records. There was 1,335 data breach incidents between November 2021 and October 2022. And what they found in this whole report was there were 5 kind of vulnerabilities to kind of watch out for that were utilized last year in 2022. The first one kind of is a nebulous group, which I don't necessarily love because that's not really a number one. But it was a large pool of frequent vulnerabilities, some as back as 2017, The flaws were in applications such as Microsoft Exchange, Zoho, Manage Engine, and VPN software like Fortinet, Citrix, and Pulse Secure. So all of those end up being older ones that were utilized. The other number 2 on the list here was Log4Shell, CVE 2021-44228. Once again, 2021, so it's almost 2 years ago. Another one, Felina, which was 2022, tracked a CVE 2022-30190. There was one for a Confluence server and data center, tracked as CVE 2022-26134, and Proxy Shell, which is a CVE 2021-34473. So these are ones that obviously are not, you can tell by the CVE number, they're not 2023. They're all last year. 4 out of the 5 were 0-day vulnerabilities that were in the wild and exploited in 2022. They were disclosed to the public, and the vendor released patches incredibly quickly. But because they're still utilized in all these heavy attacks, should go to show you that, well, they're not patched. So if you have any of these 4, Log4Shell, Felina, Confluence, or the Proxy Shell one, please make sure that you patch them immediately because they are being utilized for attacks. Now, the attack group tactic, number 1 reason, which should not be a surprise to anyone out there, is ransomware. Everyone loves ransomware. But the top groups, and some of these we've mentioned in other stats, but here you are from the group itself. Lockbit was utilized in 10% of attacks. Hive was used 7.5%. Vice Society was used in 6.3% of the attacks. And Black Cat and ALPHV, 5.1%. So these are being used to install ransomware. And if your organization has any of these, please just patch them immediately. The vendors have put patches out, so just patch your systems and utilize some kind of vulnerability scanner to see what's out there and make sure you track them and you're dealing with them. Once again, all the CVE information is available on our website, cybersecurity.byte.com, so please make sure you check that out. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. Once again, you can find out everything you need about the show, including old episodes and show notes, on cybersecurity.byte.com. You can find more information out on me on jimguckin.com. That's JIMGUCKIN.com. And you can also send me emails at me@jimguckin.com. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you stay safe online, and we'll talk again next week.
You've been listening to the Cybersecurity News Byte with Jim Guckin. Learn more about our show at cybersecurity.newsbyte.com.